We're live. I am live. What's up? It's a bit later today than I usually stream. I've already had dinner. Truth be told, I just wanted to exercise a little bit of control over my schedule insofar as like I don't have to stream at the usual hour. I'll stream whenever I want to. And so here I am streaming at 6:37 p.m. Nice. Anyway, you guys know what it is. The people who watch my streams. I none of the usuals will show up, I imagine, because most of my chatters are European and they're all asleep right now. But you can check things out on the VODs page. And also on my YouTube channel, where the VODs are all in one giant playlist. There are a couple small updates to CTGP, apparently. And it might be nice to play with those. When I say small, I mean really small, but you know, that's neither here nor there. This. Man, I really don't trust any news outlet. Like any of them. I hate them so much. Especially for foreign policy stuff. Like, whenever an American news outlet talks about the Middle East, it is nothing but a bad time. Like, genuinely. Actually, I have to turn my mic up. My mic is being a little bit too quiet for my taste. I have this stuff. Alright. Oh, we got some people online. It's nice. Always nice. Yeah, I guess I'll start. I'll just start on the what I saw happen recently. This just happened, I think today. Israel bombed, or rather airstriked the Iranian consulate in Syria. It just blew it up, like, just because, I guess. And I guess, you know, that kind of follows the pattern of behavior that Israel has been engaging in. It's just, you know, doing some real silly stuff, you know? Good boy. Have to get reacquainted with this game. I can't believe I clipped that like that. Ah, 3 green shells. He's definitely gonna get something better if he hasn't already. Oh. I'm driving bad. Kind of to be expected. I'm gonna chain this, I think. Yeah, that works. That works really well. The best item. I love that item. Yeah, I don't know if I want to actually look at any particular news outlet that's talking about the consulate attack, because American news outlets have not been well, they've been covering it in a way that I don't think does anybody any favors, really. Globalize my agenda. Hi, I did not expect to see you in chat. What's up? Ah. Ah. Joke's on you, I never sleep? Yeah, apparently not. I've underestimated the degree to which most people's sleep schedules are fucked, I guess. I was just talking about the Iranian consulate that was airstriked by Israel, and how I don't trust any American news outlets' coverage of that. It's only 2 a.m., no sleep time yet? I see. Yeah, no, the American news outlets have all been very, like, fear-mongery about the actual events of the matter, such that I don't even want to get a like accurate recounting of events from them, because it would be so interspersed with like pro regional war crap, pro containment, military containment, like, is it confirmed that Israel was behind it? Yes. Yes, it is. It was an airstrike with such precision that only Israel could do it, and I believe that even the American news outlets are saying that, like, Israel conducted this airstrike. So. Which makes sense, honestly. Like, I know that, like, all American news outlets want to talk about in international politics are Iran and China, right? But there is, there's something to be said about, like, Israel's, motivations and interests in situations like these, where, kind of like with nuclear war, we talk about that on occasion. A regional war in the Middle East is not in any country's interests, but Netanyahu would potentially benefit from it. And Netanyahu being a goddamn crazy person, he's crazy enough to do something like this because it would extend him some goodwill from the public. Fascist dictators always love a good war to sort of keep their support numbers up. And, in Israel, people fucking hate Muslims. Like, a lot. So that's why I imagine Israel's doing this. And, Netanyahu also has some downright delusional ambitions of, like, Greater Israel or whatever, where he just does a bunch of land grabs. Kind of like with nuclear war, I think this is extremely unlikely to happen, because, like, this is so blatantly against the United States' interest that it's possible, if Israel really tried to provoke a regional war with Iran, that America would actually stop supporting them, which is kind of surprising given how much America has seemed to completely disregard its international standing and various human rights standards, etc., just to support Israel. But it would be too ruinous for all parties involved for anybody to want anything to do with it. But that's what Netanyahu's gunning for with this airstrike, I think. I think it's kind of like he's testing what the U.S. will allow him to do, like doing some escalatory stuff, but sort of finding enough plausible deniability, enough plausible justification for X, Y, or Z thing that, like, it's not such an act of war that any country would risk provoking the U.S. over it. There's a weird circular logic to it, but yeah. If anything is happening, it's almost definitely happening behind the scenes. And we'll probably only hear about it after it's already happened. Like if regional war broke out, we would know. But again, I feel like Netanyahu would be very strongly discouraged from the intelligence community. When did the strike happen? Today, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So, well, I guess for you it would be yesterday, but you know, just like for me a few hours ago, something like that. It was very recent. I'm sure it wasn't just an elaborate April Fool's joke. Ah, I see. I see the angle you're taking. Technically, no, but I will. I'll levy you this point that people don't really do April Fools that much anymore. I don't know if you've noticed. I think ever since the pandemic, people kind of stopped doing April Fools all that much. I guess people kind of didn't see the point in it. The blue shell, sure. Oh, he had a mushroom. Let's see. We still do at least here. Well, that's good for you guys, I suppose. I can't believe that's not out of bounds, but alright. I need an item. Okay. Ow. Come up past me the bullet. Alright. This race is not all that bad so far. I'll see what's up on lap 3. Probably gonna chain this star. Most likely. Yeah. Painting this as well. That's good. Now I'm making a big assumption here. That assumption I was gonna say that assumption being that nobody has the shock. Or at least that they don't want to use it if they do have it, but seems like that wasn't the case. Okay. I'm in first now. 3 green shells. Oh, he hit the tree. Ow. We're gonna do some Muslim today. What is your opinion on 14-year-old girls marrying 50-year-old men? Seems pretty bad, but that's not an Islam-specific thing. That's a religious reactionary thing. There are Christians in the United States that are advocating for that. I was told I'm the crazy one for not liking that. You're not the crazy one for not liking that. They are the pedophilic one for supporting that. Child marriage has long been the purview of religious reactionaries. Most people who live in countries where that's legal don't like it. Then they called me a degenerate for supporting gay rights. That sounds about right. Yeah. If you encounter a religious person, I mean like actively practicing religious person, especially if they are not of the majority religion in that country, then they're gonna be fucking reactionary as all hell. Except actually no, I shouldn't say especially not of the majority religion. Just any practicing religious person is statistically kind of likely to be an insane reactionary. They asked my gender and I listed like a paragraph of random words. That's probably the correct strategy. They were like, seems legit. Nice. I have to use this now, kind of. Ooh, that was really good. But I didn't get an item. Ah! You know what's funny? Muslims in the United States are really not like that. You know what's the best religious argument for gay rights? You should hit them over the head with a rock. That's probably the best argument. If I'm being serious about it, the best argument in any of the Abrahamic religions for gay rights is that God doesn't make mistakes, and he made you like that, therefore that was intentional. That's the argument I know of. If God doesn't like it, why does it fit? Yeah, true. If God didn't want people to have anal sex, then why did he make people's buttholes so fuckable? Checkmate, dumbass. And if God didn't want people to suck dick, why did he make people like sucking dick so much? Really seems inconsistent. You know, when you think about it. I have a Mega Mushroom. Okay. I'm gonna throw this back and use this. Yes, I dodged! I had a feeling, like, that's a pretty likely spot for somebody to use the shock. I didn't know if they were gonna, like... Oh no! I missed? I can't believe I missed. That like, little tilt sent me so much wider of the landing area than I was expecting it to. Then asked if I fuck dogs, if it fits. Boldavage said, trust me, it doesn't fit. That's true. Ow. Blooper, best item. Are you arguing this guy, like, currently, online? It's kind of wild. 10 years later, that convo's gonna get me canceled? Probably not. Oh, the weirdest golden mushroom of all time, and I get 5th. He was in some streamer's chat? Okay. I gotcha. Tag teaming with some Zionists, calling me a degenerate for supporting queer people. Classic Zionist Muslim unity in hating queer people. Yeah. All ethno-nationalists are basically the same, regardless of their aesthetic. You'll find the same talking points across all of them. They'll just have, like, minor aesthetic distinctions. Like, very minor. Zionists and Islamists are quite similar, although Islamists are usually not in power in the countries where they are very active. So they have to advance their political objectives through more terroristic means. Although you see in countries where there are Islamist parties in power, they don't do terrorism because they have access to the levers of power. Meanwhile, with Zionists, the United States is a very friendly climate to Zionists, so a lot of the political action that happens here is pretty conventional. And in Israel, Zionists have the levers of power and are actively suppressing an ethnic group, so that, you know, they're doing a genocide, which is pretty characteristic of ethno-nationalism. But you can ask them their opinion on a lot of stuff, like, and it's basically the same. This kind of stream where political leanings live are so good. I also met a techno-fascist who believe literally every country is fascist right now. Well, Well, they're not correct. I'll say that much. That's a, like, you could make that argument probably more compellingly than you could make the argument that, like, every country is not fascist or something like that. It would be more correct to say every country is fascist than to say the opposite, that no country is really fascist. But yeah, still no, not correct, per se. I asked him to name successful fascist states. Bro said America, South Korea, and Taiwan. South Korea and Taiwan are somewhat correct. But you see, fascism by definition can't be successful. Also, oops. DS... sorry, I'm driving like such shit. RD Congo is truly democratic still, so it's all fine. Yeah, that's true. It says democratic in the name. Successful fascism is an oxymoron, because fascism doesn't, like... Fascism doesn't have an end game. There is no, like, end political objective of fascism by which it can succeed. It lives off of not having completed any sort of major objective. That's kind of what defines fascism, and that's why fascist movements consume themselves so quickly. Is because, like, they have to keep a burning fire of reactionary fervor. But you can't do that if your objectives have been achieved, because then there's nothing to be, like, really, really animated about. This definition of fascism was X everything. That sounds, you know, that sounds kind of like a libertarian to me. Very, very silly, silly thing. Although I get the sense that, like, if, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this guy was saying, like, you know, trying to say that every country is fascist as a way to, like, justify fascism, because they know that fascism looks bad, but they could potentially launder it through it just being everywhere. Yeah, he's pro the fascism. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Most libertarians are like that. At least the ones that have sort of consolidated a little bit. You know, there will be libertarians that do the whole anti-state shtick. He was like, fascism is just inherent human nature. Yeah, okay, so you guys, dumb. Where do you lean? I'm a socialist. Beyond that, I don't know. Labels are kind of silly. I have socialist tendencies. I guess socialism is a good label to apply to me broadly. I have anarchist tendencies. I'm a sock personally. Disgusting. I'm kidding. Sockdoms are welcome, as long as you wouldn't kill me when the revolution happens, etc., etc. Something, Rosa Luxemburg, something. Socialist like in Europe, or like Venezuela? Venezuela isn't socialist. It's just shitty capitalist. Socialist like Rojava. That's the closest thing right now to an actual, like, socialist project. I promise, Lowe's the shotgun. It's okay. I trust you. Just like Rosa Luxemburg trusted the German Social Democrats. It's hard to, like, say if there's a movement or country that I align with, because I'm not a campus, and really the only person that has analogous views to me is me. Although I guess you could read Rosa Luxemburg and it'd be pretty close, but, like, you know. And a lot of, I think I would actually be to the left of a lot of European socialists, because a lot of the European socialist parties have kind of moderated into more social democratic policy. You met a Trump today? Like a Trump supporter? Somebody's gonna block that. Yep. Apparently there are a lot of Trumps in the area I live around. Ah. No, a person. Oh, a person with the last name Trump. Trumpas. Oh yeah. See, the reason Donald Trump's last name is Trump is because his dad was German, and moved here after the Second World War. His I think his original family name was Drumpf, which is a German name. What do you think of Switzerland, since we're on the political talk? Disgusting. Nation of bankers. But, I mean, every country, I have a inherent political problem with the nation state. So I would feel kind of the same way about every country, that, like, they have problems inherent to the nation state form. Dreamer anti-Semitic? No, I was talking about the Nazi gold shit. Nazi collaborationism is cringe. Banking on its own is fine. You have to have banks in any society that has money. That's kind of how that works. No, I'm fucking dead. Ah. I'm so bad at that part. I think they stole our gold too after we got annexed. Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's like... I think that's how the Nazis funded a lot of their war effort in the East, is just plunder. Which is pretty typical of wartime, but still bad. Still pretty bad. Pretty cringe, not gonna lie. What was I saying? Guess about labels? I don't know. Oh, can't believe I didn't get knocked off there. Swiss did? Oh, the Swiss stole your gold. Okay. A lot of gold was in their banks, and the owner was no more, so they just took it, I think. Okay. Yeah. How would a non-state system work? Well, that's pretty difficult to describe. You would have to do a transition, right? Like, you can't exactly obliterate the nation-state all at once right now, because the nation-state is so entrenched as a mode of political organization. What you would try to do is sort of you would try to entrench working class interests into the state as it now exists. If you're building socialism, like building a socialist movement in one country, you have to do it piecemeal. You know, reform by reform, whatever. I know Rosa Luxemburg would probably smack me for the shit I'm saying right now, but it's kind of true. You have to engage with the system as it is. The truth of the matter is, by the time you get to a non-state system, you're so far in the future that even the most expert academics wouldn't know what that looks like. But if I had to like hazard a guess, it would look like some kind of syndicalism, where the government resembles more like an amalgam of workers' cooperatives or workers' syndicates and unions, basically worker democracy at every level, as opposed to like bourgeois democracy or like bourgeois political appointments, things like that. Very highly theoretical terms that we're engaging in here, but yeah. Generally, that's like the eventual end state that you sort of want to advance towards, more or less. You know. And historically, we've learned from failures of socialist movements in the past that any socialist movement that is co-opted by the interests of the state is like doomed to fail. You know, think about Venezuela, where, you know, any of these socialist movements or countries that I would argue right now are not really very socialist, were at one point socialist, or at the very least very socialist leaning. But it's like the adherence to the nation-state form inherently replicates the class dynamic that state is designed to engage with, which is the capitalist class and the working class, which is the class dynamic you want to actually obliterate. And if there are no classes, then you'd have to have a very different organizing principle than the nation state. Although, again, theoretical. If you translate the name we call Donald Trump out of Lithuanian and into English, he would be Donald Short. That's kind of funny. I like that. Okay, fake news, I think. Wait, really? No, I need that to be true. I need his name to be Donald Short. Especially because he's not all that short. I think he's 6'1"? I don't know. Politicians tend to be taller. It's a sort of appearing on TV kind of thing. Like, every American president has been at least, I think, 5'10" or something like that. Very tall people running our country. Short kings need to take back the politics of our land. Why not having decentralized power systems where it's people directly voting on a smaller set of policies that define the small group representation? A little like states work without the federal part. Direct democracy is, of course, is a good idea, and I support that. Like, whatever the worker democracy that I described would be direct democracy in many senses of the word, especially because we have the technology to do that. You know, in fact, to make it much more feasible than it used to be. But I think at the scale of organization that we're looking at, some degree of federation might be necessary. You know, if we're talking about an international socialist project where it's like the whole world is more or less organized on socialist principles, like of collective ownership and all that, you do at some point have to have at some point you have to have a way to coalesce smaller communities into larger units. But again, I think that would look a little bit more like unions do right now. You know how like there are local unions that are members of larger unions, but that are all ideally still like democratic and not like reliant on coercing their members into being a part of it and stuff like that. Kind of like how you have the what is it, the auto workers union? I forget what it's called, but that's a national thing. That's a federal thing. But there are local and state branches of that, I believe. You know, any socialist project, in order to be successful, should and has to be truly international, whatever that looks like. Because capital right now is international. Like, you take a look at business interests, and they are the same across every country. You know, businesses operate in various different countries across the world. You take a look at fascism, and fascism, despite its isolationist tendencies in some ways, is also a truly international movement, in part because it's funded by capital. You know, fascist talking points in America, because of American cultural hegemony, just get replicated elsewhere. Every fascist movement around the world looks the same. That doesn't necessarily have to be 100% the case with socialism, but, you know, there has to be some sort of political movement or political organization at scale if you want this to... if socialism is going to be, like, a successful project. Donald Trump was born a year after World War II ended. What was his father doing between the years of 1939 and 1945 with that German last name? Probably making deals with Hitler, as were many German businessmen. Such is the one of the primary liberal critiques of Donald Trump is his dad was a Nazi businessman, and you know, obviously that's bad. But his dad's dead, and now he's here, and you know, I prefer to critique Trump on his own merits. and not just that his dad was a Nazi businessman. It's that his dad was a Nazi businessman, and also Trump commits fraud on the daily, and is a wet, sloppy boy who hates democracy and doesn't like losing, and etc., etc. Although there I go, kind of sounding like a liberal. Orange man bad, don't you know? Rare, not rare, but relatively common liberal W. He's gonna hold this. Yeah, okay. His dad's mustache did not age well. Did he have the Hitler stash? If so, that's really funny. Yeah. You know, that was just a, like, in style back then. That was like a stylish mustache. I feel like if there's a standard socialist way of life you're forced into a certain lifestyle, it takes away from some of your liberties. I like this conversation even if I think differently. There's no standard socialist lifestyle. I think you're thinking about this the wrong way. You're thinking about this in terms of what will people be required to do, because that's like how everybody thinks in terms of politics. Everybody's not that great at critical thinking. They're accustomed to politics in terms of what does the government tell you to do versus what does it tell you, like, not to do. Socialism, it's possible to have a socialist world that looks very similar to this one, but just a little bit better. In fact, a market socialist world would still have a market economy. The difference is the capital of every business would be owned by the employees of that business. There would be no such thing as the shareholder as distinct from an employee of the business, and businesses would be democracies. You have to tell people to work or stuff like that. You do, kind of, but humans are not like naturally idle creatures. This is one of the few things that I will defer to human nature on. Humans are not idle creatures. We want to do things. We want to work in some limited capacity at the very least. And if the trend of the past 40, well, actually the last 100 years of technological advancement is indicative of anything, it is that people are vastly more productive than the level that's needed to sustain humanity at a pretty comfortable level. People are very productive, and they want to be productive. People don't like sitting on their ass. It produces pretty bad states of mind. Has there been a socialist experience that didn't force people to work? No, not to my knowledge, funnily enough. And on some level, there will never be a society completely free of coercion. Experiment. Yeah, I get what you mean. On some level, there's no way to completely remove all coercion from society. But a socialist world would be one in which there is substantially less coercion than there is in a capitalist world, because in a socialist world, you would have much more positive liberty. In this bedtimes are coercion. Unironically, yes. Very, very minor form of coercion. But, you know, people go to bed at whatever hour they feel like. It's just, there's a certain natural inclination to gravitate towards certain, I don't know, bedtimes, because nighttime is when you sleep, daytime when you don't sleep, something like that. Anyways, sorry, I'm getting lost in the weeds. Forced into a certain lifestyle. You're not forced into a certain lifestyle in socialism any more than you are in a capitalist world. In fact, the point of socialism is that you would be less forced into certain patterns of behavior than you are in a capitalist world. In the world we currently live in, there's an incredibly large amount of income inequality driven by accumulation of wealth by a very small group of people that are able to keep prices high because they have so much wealth they can basically dictate whatever the world does, right? You're underestimating how fucked my sleep schedule is, streamer man. Maybe I am. Well, look, the bedtime thing is a meme, but like, the point about coercion in socialism is very real, because a socialist world would inherently be more democratic than a capitalist world. collective ownership of a certain business means that people who work at that business, who are employed there, are the ones owning and running the business. Decisions are made democratically. They are voted on. In fact, there's evidence to this effect with market cooperatives. People are freer to pursue what they would want to in life because wages in a cooperative are flatter on average a little bit higher and more stable than in a capitalist, like a traditional firm, what economists would call that. So think about in a capitalist mode of production, like the world we currently live in. You are forced to pay your bills. I don't know, like a lot of what you're forced to do is very indirect. It's rare that you come across direct coercion nowadays, except at the hands of the police, which would be substantially reduced and altered in a socialist world. By virtue of wealth being made and owned and distributed democratically, the coercion would be lessened because everybody would have the means to do what they will. There we go. That's what I was reaching for. A lot of the coercion that is part of the capitalist world comes as a product of things being gatekept behind money. And the hoarding of that money at the top prevents people at the bottom from living their lives how they would want to. Even when it's like very, very reasonable things. I want to go to school. I want to be able to hang out with my friends more. I want to be able to have a car, or like have not go into crippling amounts of debt over living in a 2-bedroom apartment or something like that. Pretty reasonable, what I think everybody could say are very reasonable things to want in a modern society. But because rents are so high, because everything is so expensive relative to people's paychecks, we don't get that. We get a world where people are like held basically at death's point by threat of starvation because their pay is so low, because most of that money actually goes to stock buybacks, and that goes to the shareholders. The most of the wealth in the world goes to the 1% of the wealthiest, and that is the coercion of capitalism. Is that, like, in order to live in this world, you need money, and in order to get money, you have to work at a certain, I don't know, you have to work at a job, which is pretty standard, but like, you can't get the money that you need because you are subject to the whims of your boss, who makes more money than you and has a vested interest in you not making as much money. It was that was very winding, but I hope that makes sense. I hope that made sense. There's a lot of implicit coercion in capitalism that could be at least substantially reduced in a socialist world. Are you French? I heard the term bourgeois before. Yeah, no, I'm not French. I'm American. I speak French, but bourgeois is the term for the class of people that owns all the wealth, that makes their living by owning stuff. If you prefer, I could just call it the owning class or the capitalist class. It has a few different names, but consistently it's been referred to as the bourgeoisie. You speak French? Yes, I do. It's a second language, so I'm not fluent, but I do speak it, and I've been practicing for several years. Also, I've been driving like absolute shit, but look, it's all for the sake of entertainment, so that's what's up. Yeah. You be racist towards the French, is that a thing? Not only is it a thing, it is morally necessary. You must be racist towards them. You have to. Or else I will kill you. That's coercion. This actually, all this, the ideological discussion of what socialism is actually reminded me of something that I started to notice a little bit recently. Actually, or maybe I'll get to that in a second. Your Dr. Costefort. Okay, that's your name. I missed it the first time. The socialist system to regulate all things with the boss. There would be too many people managing, the bad people not going according to the rules. I don't... What? Let me try to address this piece by piece. Regulate all the things with the boss. There would be no boss in a socialist world. Every position would be elected. If there is a hierarchy, it would be elected over a certain period of time. If people don't like what management or somebody in the upper ranks is doing, they vote them out and vote somebody else in that would have the interest of the cooperative in mind. That's the difference between socialism and capitalism. In capitalism, the capital is owned by a specific class of people who are unelected. In a socialist system, that capital is distributed among everybody such that there is no class, or at least there is only extremely minute class distinctions. There'd be too many people managing the bad people not according to the rules. I don't know what that means. So I'll just keep it at me having addressed the first part, I guess. That there would be no, like, single boss. It's kind of like how there's no king, you know? The capitalist class are just kings of a kind of international, non-specific kingdom, you know? No, I can't do that on Mirror. I think I'm gonna go to sleep. Goodbye. Goodbye. Have a good sleep. Driving like shit because it's mirror mode. He's expected. All right, I'm just gonna use this. No, Bowser, I'm so sorry. All right. But there was something interesting that I noticed recently, a distinction within, like, certain groups of people that would call themselves socialists. It's a very small group of people. But online, there are certain people that you know sometimes people refer to as tankies. These are socialists who would defend the more authoritarian socialist countries like the Soviet Union, Vietnam, China. Some of which I would argue are not socialism, but if you could correctly argue that they were socialism, I would argue that these were failures of socialism, bad socialism. And then there are people that we refer to also as campists, people who defend countries like by virtue of them not being America. By the way, I speak French, so for the races, I see. I'll get to that in a second. I just want to mention this. This might be interesting. A lot of times there's a heavy overlap between tankies and campists, defending countries that aren't America by virtue of them not being America. But it is possible, and I have seen there be campists who aren't tankies, first of all. That one's a lot more common. There are a lot of far-right people who defend Russia and who defend, like, very obviously not socialist, like not even aesthetically socialist, authoritarian countries because they just like authoritarianism. They like fascism and stuff, and the US, like, isn't fascist enough for them. But there are also tankies who are, I believe in their heart of hearts, they are socialist, and they don't necessarily defend countries to the last. Like, that they'll acknowledge certain critiques of countries that aren't America, that have been, like, socialist projects and whatever. But they defend them on the principle that they are a socialist project and we should learn from them and things like that. Just a little bit more than I think would be warranted, to such an extent that it gets into the territory of, like, defending authoritarian. Not a very common divide to run into, but I think it does exist. There are tankies that are not campists, and there are many campists who are not tankies. But there is there's an overlap there. The Venn diagrams aren't perfectly on top of or within one another. I mean that there would be too much police taking care of the people who do not follow the rules and taking advantage of others. Isn't that what we currently do? There'd be too much police, characteristic of modern America, very much a capitalist country, taking care of the people who do not follow the rules and taking advantage of others. Also sounds pretty characteristic of the police in modern America. Yeah. One of the problems with why the police are so exploitative right now is first of all because they are in the employ of the nation state, which means that they necessarily serve the interests of capital. They will brutalize any protest that does not serve that purpose. That's why instances of police brutality are so high, because that's their job. Their job is not to like protect and serve. But then also there are a lot of functions in the United States, especially, that we have gutted other like social programs and administrative tools for, that we now just let the police kind of cover for, or like plug up the, like patch up the holes or whatever. And you know, the police fundamentally are just a hammer. They're there to use force. And when when your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So the police are just like, they'll just fuck up everything, you know? But I think what we need is a community policing program. In America, community policing is not a thing. You can live in a neighboring city and commute to a different city to be the police, you know, neighboring city which you have no community ties to. That's one thing. And then fundamentally, there needs to be a delegation of responsibility so that the only thing that a quote-unquote police force would do is keep the peace. Any of the other stuff, like wellness checks, any of that should be done by a, like, social worker, should be handled by some sort of welfare administrative tool. I'll get to it straight away, and then I'll see what's going on. Such a system as you explained, how would armies work? You need one to protect yourself to a certain extent. Yeah, so Rojava would be a good example of this. You wouldn't have armies by conscription. I mean, the US has like a volunteer military, which isn't necessarily an anti-socialist thing. Like in the end state of society, a sort of armed force of defense against hostile neighboring countries wouldn't be wouldn't be really necessary, but like engaging with the world that we live in rather than the end state, the army would probably look pretty similar. It would just be used more in well, actually, it would be used less. That would be the point. It would be used a lot less. Because currently, the reason that nations maintain standing militaries is to enforce their political will abroad, and that political will fundamentally is based off of the interests of businesses. So armies would be serving a very, very different purpose. There wouldn't really be any like offensive, like. Offense in terms of military operations wouldn't be as much a part of like the military discourse. That again is pretty far off, but like you would still have armies and stuff. They would be voluntary, and they would like you wouldn't have conscription really. That's kind of an intermediary period. Although, again, for a lot of this stuff, you might want to ask somebody who's more of an expert on the subject than I am. There are probably quite a few Marxist economists out there who have written extensively on the subject of what would a transitory socialist state or socialist society look like. You know? really believe in the same outcomes you believe in, actually. I just think our approaches are different. The closest thing you were saying is modern-day Switzerland? No, it is not. I promise you, modern Switzerland is probably not all that close to a socialist country. Because wealth is still privately owned. In a socialist world, there would be no private ownership of wealth. You know, anything that could be considered a vehicle of capital accumulation would be owned and controlled collectively rather than by any individual person or even small group of people. What the? How did that happen? You know, there aren't any states, like I said earlier, there aren't any states that really align especially closely with this principle, but there are businesses that do. Some businesses, you know, that are market cooperatives or workers cooperatives rather, that's that are democratically owned and controlled, and a lot of them remain stable through recessions and whatnot by virtue of like pay cuts, hiring decisions, and salaries being voted on in some capacity by the body of people that work there. But then also because fuck, I kind of lost my train of thought. More stable. I was saying they were more stable for some reason. Whatever, it'll come back to me. I think the important thing is that like, oh yeah. You're most likely to see an example of socialism working with one specific policy or one specific business rather than a specific state. It's one of those things that happens like very, very slowly. This is kind of how capitalism overtook feudalism. It was a very gradual process. And there were elements of capitalistic organization in small merchant operations that existed in otherwise feudal states and environments until gradually the capitalist standard of like organizing trade and whatever overtook the existing feudalist regimes, and then that became the new normal of the world. What do you think about growth in the case? Should there be constant innovation development? What you're talking about, growth and innovation / development are not the same thing. Growth, I think, should be kept at a manageable level. You shouldn't be trying for some insane, like, quarter-over-quarter growth. That is an unreasonable expectation, and it is part of what actually contributes to the capitalist boom-bust cycle. The unreasonable expectation that growth can be sustained infinitely and that you will have growth quarter after quarter after quarter, you know, all that, leads to a lot of speculation and bad investing, unsustainable investing, the building of these house of cards for the sake of getting those short-term profits, which eventually leads to a market collapse. And that makes a lot of people's lives worse, needless to say. But there have been many breakthroughs in innovation of like computer technology and whatever, the internet, like motor vehicles, whatever. Almost all of the innovation that we have seen in the past like 100 years at the very least are not as a product of private investment and capitalist motivations, but rather the result of state investment, not on something that is profitable, but on something that would greatly benefit society. Any vaccine that you could think of, any medicine that you could think of, was not developed on a private, was not financed, I should say, by private, business funds, was not necessarily created solely by the mechanisms of the market. There's been some pretty heavy state involvement there, and public involvement as well, because that money's coming out of taxpayers' pockets. Howdy, Jaime LaBouffe, welcome to chat. Always good to have new faces. Dude, that guy is smurfing, I think. That's a really hard shortcut. basically what I'm saying is if innovation and development, new technology, new research, and advancements in the material things that can make life better were solely left to capitalists, then life would not get better. Not for the working class, anyway. Because it is in the class interests of the capitalists to keep those advances behind a paywall. One that, you know, would like in debt or bankrupt poor people in order to get. A lot of the you know, advances that we are now able to enjoy were not created by capitalists on their own, but rather were created with the benefit of public investment, public research initiatives as well. So it wasn't even like the idea to create certain things, the idea to like say, all right, we need to cure polio, we need to do it now. No like business person would ever do that because it's an uncertain venture. You know, businesses are very risk averse. It was a lot of governments in the world who have historically decided to undertake massive research projects. This is also the case with COVID. So yes, there will be innovation and development under a socialist system, and in fact, if the material incentives are such that we surmise them to be, then it should explode under a socialist system, because now the incentive is not strictly profit, but rather it is more aligned with the human interest, because of the, you know, sort of class antagonisms that we're talking about here would be either eliminated or very much lessened. Today's government, it is a state. Contradicting? Not necessarily. I have critiques of the state, and I believe that eventually we need another organizing principle, but that other organizing principle would still be capable of the good things that a state does. You're talking about the innovation critique from capitalist idiots? I am, but it is, you know, it's like, this stuff is worth engaging with, I think. The thing that makes a state is not the good things that it does. There's a very specific definition of state that I'm looking to root out, that socialists take issue with. And a state, as defined ironically by a liberal philosopher, Max Weber, is any political unit that is that maintains legitimacy through a threat of violence in a region. Basically, France has these kind of borders, or America has these kind of borders. Why do we recognize that those are the borders? Because if anybody tries to contest otherwise, you will be shot, literally. You know, there are, or maybe not nowadays, but you would be subject to the fullest extent of legal force and like, well, police force. Without that, there's still a whole lot that you can do. There's still the investment, the manufacturing industry, all sorts of stuff. Sorry, it escapes me at the moment because I've been talking for a little bit. But here we go. The public goods of education, medicine, general technological development, infrastructure are not specifically the purview of a state, because, or are not specific to a nation state kind of organization, because you can have a nation state without having any of those. You know, if you reduce the state to its most essential elements, that is the monopoly of violence and the preference of the ruling class over the subjugated classes, that is what we're looking to eliminate. You know, it's kind of like how conservatives love the state, but they don't like the good things that states do. You know, conservatives very frequently will invoke big government arguments, but only ever, interestingly, when the government decides to do something good for a change. When the government decides that they need to crack down on abortion, or when they decide to enforce some obscure sodomy law to put gay people in prison, conservatives are interestingly quiet. The small government conservatives are interestingly quiet. What do you think of the case study of Milei's Argentina? I think that is an excellent example of the massive failures of libertarianism and capitalist states. Because, like I said, with you know, the small government conservatives, he didn't eliminate the state. He just eliminated all the good things that the state did. You know, so now you have a state without any of the social infrastructure that was helping to keep people afloat, as meager as it may have been in Argentina in particular. You know, like I don't think it's very hard to look at a country that has a currency that's been devalued by more than 50% in a few short months, and like massive unemployment, skyrocketing social unrest, massive police repression, and say, yeah, I think this is a failure from like a human interest perspective. We're all agreeing that anarcho-capitalism is not a thing, right? Yes, anarcho-capitalism objectively is not a thing, because capitalism requires a strong and, in some measure, authoritarian state to enforce the property rights of a small owning class over the dispossessed masses. You can't have a capitalist organization unless you have force to maintain it, because the tendency will be towards redistribution. Capitalism needs to specifically prevent that from happening. Hence, one of the various problems with the state, and it's why I'm very wary of the state as a set of institutions, because it's like it is naturally inclined. Even Adam Smith acknowledged this. I'm actually reading Adam Smith. I've been reading him for a few months just to see what his arguments are. Even Adam Smith himself acknowledged that it is the natural inclination of the state to prefer the organizations of the owners over the organizations of the workers, and it will use force to favor the owners over the workers, thus creating a repressive like antagonism. There's not state in that case that would issue the capital to recognize. Wait, what? There's not state in that case that would issue the capital to recognize. I'm not sure I fully understand what you're saying. Whenever someone says ANCAP, I think of Margaret Thatcher in punk clothing. True! That's so true. But yeah, like, Milei in Argentina didn't eliminate the state. He just stopped doing all the good things that the state did. Whoa, what? Oh, this track is goofy as hell. I have 3 red shells, and I will use them. Willivator. I know Willivator. That guy's cool. Oh, also, I think. No, you know what? I'm actually just not sure what you mean by that sentence about state and capital there. So I'm not gonna. So I'll wait for you to clarify, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to like address the wrong thing. If you can tell by my username, I'm French. Well, welcome to chat. It's nice to have a French chatter, I guess. Frenchies, that's true. How am I in first? I haven't been like, I haven't been racing particularly well. Track is so wacky. You know, I would very much like it if those rocks did not hit me. I like that. I like not being hit by rocks, actually. I think that's preferable. Alright, cool. Ah, this section. The Green Hill Zone section. What do I do? Just go straight? Okay. We're good, we're good. I'm glad I held that mushroom. Sick. On peut faire comme les Parisiens, parler dans le dos des gens. Speak on the back of the people? I don't entirely understand what that means. It might not translate to English super well. I love the fucking angry cat face. Sounds great. What else did I want to do with the stream? I had half a mind to start looking at the Destiny versus JonTron debate, because that's a very well-known debate in online politics that I have not seen, and that I think that would be good content. But I opened the debate in a separate tab. It is 2 hours long, and I'm already an hour into stream. Don't know if I want to go the full 2 hours like I usually do on stream. I think I might just call it an hour and a half. Maybe I'll start doing that next stream. Maybe. We'll see. Yoshi Circuit. Good track, good track. Dr. Costiforta, thank you very much for the follow. Great to have an additional set of eyes on this. I feel like this is going to be a very different Yoshi Circuit race than the other race. Maybe I'm wrong. These guys are like they're cracked. Oh no. Ow. Give me that. I'm off for today. Have a good one. See you next time. Nice. It's been good having you. Have a good one. Can I get away with this maybe? Yes, I can. Wow, one mushroom too. Good. Willivator, the homie. Alright, let's out of here. Oh no! I got bumped and that prevented me from jumping at the time that I wanted to. Ooh, shock? I'm gonna chain this, I think. Oh, what the hell? What's that bomb? There you go. Shock before boxes. Yo, what's up, Willivator? Give me mushroom. Yes. Oh, okay. For a second, I thought I hit him, but thankfully I did not. I would have been actually kind of sad if I hit him. Oh, am I gonna get? How did I get triple shrooms in that position? Hello. How? I guess I'm gonna get first now. No! I got greedy. That was pure greed and nothing else. I tried to stunt. Little did I know I was idiot. Dang. Silly me. I wanna... 15 minutes left in the stream. Maybe I'll start. Maybe. Yeah, I said I would. Fuck it. All right. Let's open up this properties. Have you thing? Dating John. All right. Let's see what's up.
Oof. All right, boys.
Classic Taliban.
We're going in.
Oh, there we go. I think I can hear you now.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah, how's the, is this mic quality good?
Yeah.
First question, what are you socialist?
Okay.
What are you socialist, communist, Marxist, Leninist, Trotskyist, anarcho-Cindy, anarcho-communist, just Marxist, Leninist, Maoist, Stalinist, anarchist, or a social democrat? No, I would never be a SOC them. I would actually sooner... Well, let's start with what I'm not. I am not a Marxist-Leninist. I am not a Stalinist. I am not a Maoist. Not usually, anyways. Any other one of those labels could describe me pretty well. Yeah. Usually I prefer to emphasize my anarchist sympathies in my politics, because I feel like the discourse hasn't been as like brain poisoned with the term anarchist as it has with the terms socialist and communist. Although, like, my ideal end state of society would be some kind of, I don't know, anarcho-communist or anarcho-syndicalist utopia, something like that, you know? No, I guess in the truest philosophical sense, I would be a communist, stateless, classless, moneyless society. But you know, that's very theoretical. Oh yeah, and I guess I'm also probably not a Trotskyist. I'll say that much. Let's keep going here.
What's up, Mr. Stephen Bonnell II? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the full name. You just completely doxed me, dude. What if my name was a secret?
That's a bit, you're even more handsome in
Mr.
person.
Morelli.
Wow. Thanks, guys.
So what's up, man? What do you want to talk about? I know we got into a little spat today on Twitter. I have to say, I didn't expect today to go. It wasn't really how I was expecting my Sunday to go, but you know, with life, especially these days, you never know.
Yeah.
You don't know how it's gonna go.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I guess it's kind of a brief overview of kind of what I told you. We've been talking about a lot of these issues recently on my stream, and not just on my stream, obviously across the entire world.
Yes.
You know, cultural issues and everything are at the forefront. Both American and international politics, what with Brexit and now with Trump in the United States.
I'm a fascist, ooh. It's a joke. Yeah, I know it's a joke. I was gonna joke right back. Well, because you said ooh, it means you're a bottom, which means you will behave in my chat. So that's okay. I will tolerate fascism in my chat as long as you are a bottom. Because then I get to imagine that you're like a femboy on the other end. I don't know. Some bullshit like that. My chat is pretty lenient with like what I allow and what I don't. Usually, I draw the line at like blatant genocide apologia. That's almost the only line I have in chat. Like anything else pretty much goes except for, you know, racial slurs and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a lot of shit going on. The gaming community typically tends to lean a certain direction, you know, especially in a post-Gamergate world, where you find a lot of certain things being said, and I noticed that it seems like you are kind of on a certain side of things when it comes to this kind of...
Not a bottom, I'm a power bottom? Ah, okay, got it.
I guess what I do... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I know you have a very, very large outreach and whatnot, so seeing...
So while you're taking it...
a little bit.
So while you're taking it in the booty, you will be making the DreamWorks face the whole time, as opposed to making the O face. You know the image I'm talking about, where it's the like, it's the there's like the cartoon drawings of people having sex, and it's like, oh, these ones are both bottoms, and then like one's a top, one's a bottom, and then both of them are tops, and it's like the top or like the fucking the dom is always making the DreamWorks face, and the submissive is always making the O face. And then there's just one where both of them are doms, and they're both just making the DreamWorks face. Straight away. Okay.
But yeah, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I mean, I don't think it's troubling. I think it's actually pretty common sense.
No, I'm not a
I think
fanboy?
the
Oh,
fact
okay.
that
I got you.
people think it's troubling is what's troubling to me, because I just don't see it as very.
It was just a joke.
Could you-
No, actually.
and also, the only reason that I'm maybe on a quote-unquote side is because in this day and age, staying on the fence is just useless, because everybody knows that you're just trying to avoid conflict at that point, because we are in very polarized
Your
times.
boyfriend is?
So
Ah,
I just
based.
like to at least state
I
my
love
opinion
fanboys.
clearly, but what is it that you find so troubling? Let's start there.
So I guess it's kind of this general vague defense of Western, or more specifically like American culture. Basically, the problem I'm getting into is every time I read things, and I know that you're going to take extreme disagreement with this, every time I read things, what it always seems to boil down to is I think that this thing is better because it's majority white, and I don't want that to change. And that's like the most important thing. That's how it seems to read out to me that way.
Okay, so that is one way that you might look at the way that... I mean, obviously you can take that...
Okay. So judging on this opening, it seems like the debate that they're going to have is mostly around issues of race and ethnicity, and potentially migration as well. I know this is a big thing in the European discourse, where anti-immigrant politics is a really big thing. It seems that JonTron was engaging in a bit of Western civilization, Roman statue guy kind of rhetoric, and that's the disagreement they had, that Destiny in this case is not racist in many such cases, and JonTron maybe is
from it, but that's
We'll
really
see.
not the core argument. The core argument is that no other nation would voluntarily change its demographics. Now, people say,
oh yeah, okay,
"Oh,
so
demographics,
it's just great replacement shit. Okay, so JonTron is just doing the whole great replacement conspiracy bullshit, and then Destiny is gonna be like, no, actually, that's not happening, and also immigration is good, and normal things are pretty normal, I guess. I don't know. We'll keep going.
What do you
See how
mean?
this turns out.
It's not a white country or something like that, or demographics don't matter. But if this were true, they wouldn't have such an easy time turning around and identifying who's the problem. The quote-unquote white male. They have no...
Wow, okay, this is a lot more mask off than I expected JonTron to be fucking 3
problem
minutes
identifying
in.
it then. It's
I mean,
only
well,
when-
in terms of the problem, I mean, I think it depends on what particular thing you're talking about. But I guess, so to look at that first statement, so to kind of start this off, I'm not comparing us to any other country in the world. I think that the United States of America is relatively unique in its identity, and that we don't really have, and we don't have like an ethnic background that is tied to our country. Does that make sense?
That's kind of
As in, like,
true.
we're not like,
Yeah, well,
if you're from France, you can be French. If you're from Italy, you can be Italian, German. You can be German, Polish, like actual ancestry dating back hundreds of years. Typically, as Americans, we are Eurocentric, right, in our ancestry.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It's the USA as the proposition nation, but it is a European.
It is true, by the way, that like what Destiny's talking about is a really big distinction. Something that I had to learn about, and in some ways am kind of still learning about, that American race politics really are about race. And like we don't really have a concept of ethnicity. Like Americans look at Europe and they're like, everybody's just white, Like that's what an American would see. But like a European has a concept of ethnicity more so than race, where like there's not as much of a current of like racism against people of a specific skin color, but rather racism against people of a certain national origin or like perceived ethnic or regional origin, right? If that makes sense. So like there are some people that are really fucking racist against Slavs or or just Slavic people that are really fucking racist against each other, you know, Balkan ultra-nationalism. And an American would look at that and be like, all of you look the fucking same. And you know, that's our conception of race, because it's based off of how you look. And then, that's like a big difference between European and American political discussion.
Nation history.
It doesn't have too much to do with this debate necessarily, but it's an interesting thing to mention, I think. Yo, what's up, Henry?
Historically, there's just no debating that. When people try to debate that, yeah, there was obviously the slave population who lived here, well, brought here against their will. They were emancipated.
The first thing that you just said doesn't really make sense. It was a European nation. Like in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, Italians and Irishmen were discriminated against, like, massively coming to the United States. Like they were called. Okay. I think Irish people were called the inside-out Negroes. Like it was like.
They're still
European. All right, tactical N-word, I guess. Yeah, there was.
We didn't see it that way going back, you know, 150 years in the United States. It's like, well, they're European, they're okay. Like, that's not how we saw it. Like,
well, we weren't there at that time. I mean, I was born in 1990, well past the. I mean, my dad is Persian, my mom is Hungarian. I'm not even 100% white. I'm just saying this as a matter of fact. So when I see bullshit, I just know it. And
well, what do you mean by matter of fact?
What
I'm saying is that as time is going.
I actually don't know what JonTron is talking about. He's kind of waffling here. It's possible some of this is rooted in the Twitter discourse that was going on between these guys, which I don't know because I wasn't really on Twitter 7 years ago. Like, I had an account, but I wasn't really active. Yeah, we'll just take it how it comes, I guess.
We've seen.
So they're talking about my continent? Actually, no. Funnily enough, they're talking about America. They're mostly, you know, they're establishing, like, how racial politics have changed, or at least Destiny's talking a little bit about that. I don't know. JonTron's kind of waffling. We'll see if it goes anywhere.
More and more people be included in the identity of what it means to be an American. So it seems strange that today there's like this massive pushback on who can become included in that demographic. That just seems kind of strange.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. Well, none of this would have ever been a problem had I guess you could call them the extreme left, a nation identity politics to the fore, because when you have a nation is supposed to be a people that are all bound by at
Oh, okay. So he's making the Ein Volk, ein Vaterland, or whatever, like one people, one nation argument, which is just it's fascist stuff. So also earlier I actually mentioned that all fascism sounds the same. This is shockingly similar to how fascism actually sounds nowadays. You know, a la Great Replacement Theory or whatever. It's you know, the fascist arguments are just so easy to identify because they're so basic and like kind of beat for beat or whatever.
Least culture, if not genetics or whatever you want to say. So, you know,
yeah, some race science bullshit.
Like we're one people, but they started doing this thing where they were like, well, if you're black, you're here. If you're white, you're here. If you're, you know, they basically.
So again, like I know these are a lot of like hot button talking points. But, like when you say the left started identity politics by assigning white and black to certain areas, I would say that Jim Crow laws probably assigned white and black people to different areas more so than a Black Lives Matter speaker or talking about a racial issue. I don't agree with this narrative that all of a sudden
I think that is the case.
Out, you know, identity politics. Like if you talk to minorities in the United States, identity politics has been part of their national identity for the past, you know, since the inception of the United States.
Yeah.
I just don't know that. Well, I just don't know that it's on.
Yeah, you know, usually I'm not a huge fan of idpol on the left, like within the left. Identity politics can go in a myriad of different ways, but like it just in terms of the political discourse more generally, identity politics is and always has been a part of the national discourse and the political discourse everywhere, just about. And in some measure, it's justified because like the reason that idpol is a discussion is because on the right, there are people arguing against the right of certain identities of people to exist. That kind of makes identity politics a thing when the right is doing identity politics, you know? When I go on TV, they're saying everyone is racist. When I go to the streets in IRL places, practically everyone are just oppressed, suck them to suck underpaid people. Yeah, it sounds about right. Like, definitely, identity politics is the politics that's safe to focus on in news media because you don't actually have to talk about the people that are getting underpaid. How convenient for them. But, you know, if we're talking about why do we talk about identity politics so much, we have to talk about the right wing, because the right wing has made it their entire mission to excise, to eliminate certain identities of people from society. You know, like with anti-queer politics. That is identity politics. Like with racist politics or whatever, which haven't... Well, I mean, the right-wingers talk about DEI and some shit nowadays. That is a form of identity politics. You know? And a lot of times, this is a trend throughout history. The left tends to be on the responsive end, like, you know, defensive, responding to things instigated, political talking points instigated by the right. So that's why all the identity politics and whatnot. And until recently, class politics were not a very big topic of discussion. You know, in the U.S., it was kind of not really a thing to talk about. Class politics. And then, of course, all sorts of shit happened. Bernie Sanders made massive waves in 2016 and 2020. The hot labor summer happened, and now we have both identity politics and class politics. Racism a part of the right since negative 200,000. Hell yeah, baby, and it'll be a part of them forever after. It's just, identity politics is an inherent component of having reactionaries, which will unfortunately always be a thing. Reactionism, specifically.
On the same level. Especially because...
Well, it's not. It's on a much lesser level than it used to be. We don't have Jim Crow laws anymore. We don't, you know, women's suffrage happened, you know.
You're right, and people still manage to create divisions between themselves.
Well, because there still exist divisions. Black people are disproportionately represented in prisons. Women are disproportionately represented in certain workplaces.
Okay, but the argument is that it's white people who caused them to be in those places. That's the argument. Not that they have any agency.
Reactionary kitty.
Who do you think was responsible for Jim Crow laws?
Well, of course it was white people. Of course, I'm not arguing for Jim Crow.
Okay, well, no, I'm just saying.
Okay.
Like that, like, well, people are blaming white people, which is absurd. Well, I mean, if you go back 50 to 100 years, yeah, it was kind of white people that did it. Now, I'm not saying that we need to lock white people up now or bring back reparations or anything.
Imprison all white people.
Big problem, and I
Very true.
Because I watched pretty much your entire discussion with Sargon. Is that I know that there are extremists on the left that want to play the blame game and do that fucking white guilt bullshit. I'm not into that shit. I'm not that extreme.
I hate white guilt.
You know, like, white people need to, you know, bow their heads and be solemn everywhere and recognize their privilege all the time. Like, I think that's stupid. But it's difficult sometimes to have a conversation about these topics when a lot of white people won't even acknowledge that they exist. When you get white people to say things like, well, I'm pretty sure I could go through your Twitter and find things like reverse racism is a real thing, and, you know, white genocide exists today in America, and everybody hates the white man. Like, those are pretty charged statements when you have people that are alive today.
The word reactionary is more and more used again these days. I'm happy, yay. I'm also kind of glad that the word reactionary is like a mainstream political term. And that it's like generally a bad thing to be. Same thing with like ultra nationalist or whatever. Anyways. Sorry, if I go back. I think they were talking about Jim Crow stuff. It's kind of hard for me to address a lot of the things that are going on. So far, everything Destiny has said is correct, and I agree with it about like race politics, how things got to the place that they are today. You know, the overrepresentation of certain racial groups in prison because they've been systemically disadvantaged, and that leads to more crime in impoverished communities, which are disproportionately of those disadvantaged groups. You know, things like that. And on JonTron's end, he seems to be like, you usually stream this later, or were you busy? Kind of, I was busy. It was more just that lately I've been trying to take a more free-form approach to streaming. I didn't like as much. I didn't really I was starting to sour on the whole scheduled stream every other day at 1:30, like clockwork. It felt like a really big imposition into my schedule that I didn't really want to have. So I tried to make it a little bit more freeform. So that's why I'm gonna sub to you because I like you. Oh well, thank you so much. But yeah, anyways, or follow. I'm LaBouffe. Thank you very much for the follow. Always nice to have an additional follower in the chat. Also, Xylon MK, welcome back to chat. I'm watching, at least starting to watch, the Destiny versus JonTron debate that happened, God, 7 years ago now, or at least according to the little YouTube statistic down there. Because I've actually never seen it all the way through. So far, haven't really been able to respond to it too much because most of everything that Destiny's said in the first 7 minutes has been correct. And JonTron's kind of been like, not really making arguments, but like alluding to a lot of stuff. The revolution always starts with small steps. Indeed, comrade, indeed. We will get a revolution yet. We'll get there. This track doesn't have a lot of straightaways. I might not have a great opportunity to unpause here, not for a little bit at least. Maybe here. This might be a good place. Yeah.
In their 60s, who were legally discriminated against in their childhood. Like those are pretty extreme statements, you know.
Well, if we are going to acknowledge one side, well,
no,
it's always a one-sided thing because if you don't agree that whites are the primary cause of, you know, dysfunction in certain communities, like it has to stem back to Jim Crow, it has to stem back to slavery. Well, I don't know that, you know, these arguments can hold up decade after decade. So
Jim
I think
Crow
that's
wasn't
where people...
that long ago, though. Like, when you say a statement like that, like, that's...
Okay, but
that's
there's
true.
people who are, like, 18 years old who are committing a disproportionate amount of crime, and they...
Ah, yes, the black inner city teen argument. I'm going to take a second just to debunk the whole, why can't black people get over Jim Crow or whatever. White people be like, yeah. First of all, the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act were big steps, but not nearly enough to fix the issues created by racial discrimination at a systemic level, by Jim Crow and whatever. We still have yet to have a sweeping reparations or investment package that is like targeted at the most disadvantaged and poorest people, because that would disproportionately include black people. You know, and like Destiny said, it wasn't that long ago, and you know, a lot of the we haven't put down forcefully enough racism in public institutions, in systemic life in the United States, and then also, so that creates an environment where black people are disproportionately disadvantaged, you know, in impoverished and whatever, living in poor neighborhoods. And that is why you get the disproportionate presence of racial minorities in crime statistics, is because sociologically speaking, crime is much more likely to happen in areas where there's a lot of income inequality. America, a very wealthy country, but there's also a lot of poverty in America. So poor people commit more crime by definition than rich people, at least in terms of like how, like, in terms of crime that is visible and recognizable as crime that you would sort of viscerally react to, and things like that. So, because black people are disproportionately represented in the lowest income brackets in America, they will also be disproportionately represented in the crime statistics in America. Black people don't commit crime because they're black. Black people commit crime for the same reasons that anybody else would commit crime. That is, being desperate and very poorly materially situated. And black people disproportionately are poorly materially situated, leading to desperate mindsets, desperate activities, and things like that. That's the sociological explanation and the real explanation for why that crime statistic exists. You know? The you know, no money crime. Yeah, that's right. And it's also it's income inequality specifically as well. In places where there's not a lot of income inequality, but things are relatively uniformly poor, you actually don't get a lot of crime. You just get, you know, human misery of the garden variety. It's specifically when you have a situation of very pronounced poverty next to a comparatively wealthier area, or in a context where that shouldn't exist. You know, so in America, wealthy country where there is poverty, that means there's massive income inequality. That means that there are riches of society that people are not getting to enjoy for some arbitrary reason. Rich people, pedophiles? Yes, that is true. I lose.
Were born after me. So how do you explain that? Is that Jim Crow?
Yeah, actually it is. This is the lasting effects of Jim Crow, and the fact that America actually hasn't done anything to fix that. At least not at the at a systemic level. You know, white liberals love to do symbolic stuff like, oh, we acknowledge the struggle of black people. Okay, so how about actually fixing it? How about you stop talking about the fact that there's racial discrimination, blah, blah, and stop doing the symbolic gestures, because that takes away political attention from the things that you could actually be doing to fix it. A lot of racism in America is quote-unquote race blind. It alludes to the fact that black people disproportionately engage in XYZ behavior without specifically mentioning that the reason that they do that is because they are black. You know, it's kind of like poll taxes and literacy tests. It didn't say in the law that if you were black, you had to pay a poll tax, or if you were black, you couldn't vote. But that was the outcome. Without ever once mentioning black people, that was the outcome of that legislation. So, and of course, that's since been taken off the books. It's been ruled unconstitutional. That doesn't happen anymore. But there are other forms of race-blind racism at a systemic level. How do you fix that? Not with some performatively worded bullshit, but rather with race-blind anti-racism. Policies designed to target the very poor and vulnerable, knowing that that will help black people, because black people disproportionately would be in that position. And I say disproportionately because there are black people who have been very successful, who are, you know, some cases fabulously wealthy or generally well off, but, you know, it's a matter of disproportionate representation and statistics that we're measuring this problem, so it has to be in that same way that we fix it. You know? Where, you know, right-wingers are all too happy to defer to the statistics when saying that black people are bad, but they are not too keen on using statistics to say, well, how do you fix the plight of you know, black Americans in this country? You know? It's almost like they don't actually care about the value and insight that statistics have to offer, and simply abuse them to make a racist point. But anyways, I'm sure Destiny's going to say all that, so I'll let him go.
Okay, nobody wants to get into the realistic things. They say you want to have a conversation, but they don't really want to have a conversation. They just want to blame whites more and more. And the more
if you
whites.
had a daughter that was 18 years old, would you send her to hang out with 400 guys that were all like known like fucking juggalos or people that rape people or whatever all the time? Would you have her hang out in that environment?
No.
Probably not, right? If you had a friend and he had, you know, 30 friends that were meth heads, right? Would you be happy with him hanging out with all of these people constantly? Like, no, probably not, right? What the argument I'm getting to is that your environment shapes you a lot, right? If you have a family that dates back...
That's right, people are shaped by their environment.
You know, if you've got parents that help you, parents that take care of you, like, these things have a major impact of your life. If you have grandparents...
Can't believe I outlined that.
...directly impacted by Jim Crow, you have...
Be crime, do gay? Yes.
That were
absolutely.
You know,
I've always said
discriminated
this.
against by the state. I mean, we're not that far removed from these issues. It's not like, well, my grandparents deal with this. Do we really have... Like, we still deal with the Red Scare in the West, you know?
Okay, well, the United Kingdom didn't have Jim Crow. France didn't have Jim Crow. We still have riots. We still have Muslim riots over there. And
Bro, what?
in Sweden, they didn't have Jim Crow. They're still riots in the streets of Stockholm and Malmo and wherever else. So
I
you're
don't- I
telling
can't-
me
I
that.
can't- I'm just speaking.
So at what point do we okay? So Jim Crow, one aspect of it here in America, but as far as the rest of the Western world, we don't have these same precedents, and
Okay,
and
so
there's
hold on,
we're
I only wanna speak-
Got
in
him.
those communities.
I only want to speak in regards to the United States because everything else is way more complicated. We get into the histories of other countries and Islam and in the Europe and everything. That's all different countries. Or that's all different countries and different topics. So in the United States, I'm not trying to say that no black person is ever responsible for any of their actions whatsoever. I'm just saying that it bothers me sometimes when I listen to internet celebrities get together and talk about how irresponsible black people are when so
Justice for Nahel? Nahel? I agree. I think I remember seeing that. That was that Algerian guy that like got gunned down by the French cops, right? That was pretty fucked up.
many of them are born to single
No,
parent
no,
households
no, no, no.
with
Like it's not as if we're saying like
Yeah, I
all
remember that.
black people are irresponsible. That's ridiculous. I mean that is truly bigoted. I'm just saying, like you can't make the argument that whites should be okay with them being becoming a minority in the countries that their ancestors built.
More
if it
great
doesn't apply to
replacement
other countries.
stuff.
Wait,
What country?
whoa, we're getting way different. Hold on. White minority versus other countries. Okay, here, I'll write this down. We're not quite on that topic yet. I'm just saying that if you're not acknowledging that there are problems that exist in these communities, you'll never be able to fix it, right? And one of the big problems I had when I talked with Sargon was this idea that, like, black people just need to fix themselves. Like, I mean, sure, you can say that, but this is going to take a lot longer to get these communities.
Yeah. Here's the thing, right? Like, a lot of people who invoke some version of the personal responsibility argument do so obviously because nobody would. How should I call you? Just call me like Y2K or something. Or if you mean pronouns, any, all are pronouns. Stuff like that. But yeah, the personal responsibility argument is invoked because it's like it's obviously completely non-objectionable, right? Like obviously every person should make responsible decisions. That's kind of implied by the term responsible decisions, right? Like that's more or less self-evident. But frequently it gets invoked disingenuously. In fact, almost exclusively it's invoked to obfuscate the fact that personal responsibility often isn't enough to turn around your life on its own. Also because, like, it does nothing to fix the broader environment. People are shaped by their environment, and when you grow up in a bad environment, there's only so much that personal responsibility can, like, fix, make up for, and whatever. Like, even people who are disadvantaged in America have it relatively good, like, obviously, compared to third world countries and whatnot. But, like, to fixate exclusively on the personal responsibility argument is to deny that, like, any other kind of problem exists, any other systemic problem exists, and that's what really needs to be fixed. Because, like, if you take a look at certain, like, political tendencies, reactionary tendencies, whatever tendencies you want to look at, like, people are pretty samey across ethnicity, race, religion, whatever. People are still people. But the environment changes depending on the group of people for various reasons. Like, people generally want to be responsible. There are irresponsible people, but there's also, like, your living circumstances do a lot in that respect. But anyways, that was the big thing I wanted to focus on, is that, like, when people say personal responsibility, what they actually mean is systemic issues don't exist. But they can't just say that because that sounds dumb.
On board when they were aggravated by white communities for so long. You can't just tell a group of people that have been oppressed historically in the United States for hundreds of years, over the course of a generation to just fix their shit. Like, it doesn't work that way.
I
Yeah.
don't understand why
Yeah, there you
it
go.
is anyone else's responsibility but their own. Do they not have agency? Why is it why should someone else deal with these problems? I mean, that's basically what people are asking of this.
Because we live in a civilization where we all help each other and we have
Yeah,
to
but
exist with one another.
recently we haven't been acting that way, have we? So
recently we have been. We live in an unprecedented period of human history where more people than ever are surviving childbirth, less people than ever are dying in natural disaster, more people than ever are moving into middle classes all around the world. That's not true. We've absolutely been helping each other.
One part of that is not true. I think the middle class has actually been shrinking in the developed world. Globally, he might be on the ball, though. Only a very slight statistical nitpick. Yeah, he's hammering in on the argument that I was trying to make, not quite as well, is that, like, you know, there exists a society outside of the individual, and it's possible for you to be responsible as an individual and still disadvantaged in a society. Yeah, that's true. We do, in fact, live in a society. And that society needs to be fixed so that you can not be disadvantaged relative to somebody else, even when you're being responsible in your decision making and whatever.
And the thing is, even if you're a selfish person, this benefits you. Why are you moving to the United States and not staying in Iran? Probably because there's more people doing well in the United States, so there's more opportunity for you here than there is in Iran, right? When the United States, when everybody in the US does better, everybody does better, right? If black communities and Mexican communities get more money...
Of course.
So, well, you're saying of course now, but then earlier you're like, well, why should we help anybody else? Because you don't want to live in a shitty country with...
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they're turning everyone against each other. And so...
Well, but...
They. I wonder who he means by they. USA genocide? That's true. That is true. That's been happening lately. And, I would not be caught quoting Destiny positively on that front. No, sir, I would not. This is off-road, okay. Yeah, the US has been known to do some genocides. But this isn't about Destiny today. This is about Destiny 7 years ago and how he actually made some pretty good left-leaning arguments 7 years ago. And, obviously he wasn't like a socialist or anything. A social democrat, I think.
You're saying that, but it's like, it feels like if you point out a problem, the right is so quick to go, well, hold on, you're turning us all into it. Well, no, we're just acknowledging a problem, and now we need to fix it.
I would argue that...
Here's another mistake that liberals and, conservatives and liberals both commit. In the case of conservatives, sometimes it's not a mistake. They know what they're saying, but, systemic problems are systemic because they exist literally irrespective of any given person involved. Systemic racism in the police and systemic, the violence that police do typically against, working class people. You could fill a police system with good people, well-intentioned people, and it would still produce disproportionate outcomes for certain groups of people, because the problem isn't with any of the given people in the police system, but rather the system itself, right? It's kind of like, that's the whole thing with capitalist critique, socialists critiquing capitalism, is that it wouldn't matter if nice billionaires are running things or anything like that. The problem is that there's a structure that enables billionaires to exist at the expense of just about everybody else. And it's pretty similar with racism. You could have, if you replicated American society for all its systems, but then said, exclusively had non-racist people in the United States, there would still be systemic racism. Because it's systemic. It exists with or without the people living there. Or with or without any given person living there. Anyways, now I'm kind of waffling, so let's get back to it.
Nobody would ask Japan if it was okay that
Japan? Sus?
Japan become a minority Japanese nation.
But we're not Japan, and I don't care about Japan.
Fuck Japan, honestly, with that. USA from 1790s to 1860s, 5,500,000. Oh, yeah. No, the US had, like, massive population growth between, well, just for its whole lifespan, pretty much. Japan, very well known for its cohesive and stable society. Yeah, people on the right just like Japan because it's some sort of like, ethnically homogenous, whatever. But life is shit in Japan. Life is really shit in Japan. Because fucking they're experiencing a massive population demographic problem that they are unwilling to allow immigration into their country in order to fix. I was talking about the native genocide? Yes. Okay, yeah, that's right. 14.5 million to 500K. Yeah. That's pretty bad. Although, obviously the United States pursued that intentionally because it was a colonial project. Colonial projects are pretty necessarily exploitative. One of the tragic facts of history is that, like, a lot of that was down to diseases that people would have had a hard time containing the spread of, even if they didn't want to kill every last Native American or every last American Indian, So it was like, literally everything went wrong in that situation, and obviously, and in the 1860s, American Indians had actually adjusted to a lot of the diseases that came over from Europe. So beyond a certain point, it was entirely intentional and like 100% down to the efforts of the United States. Yeah, pretty cringe. Give me this item box, thank you.
And also, Japan is one of the most racist fucking countries in the world. You want to be like Japan?
Yeah, Japan is pretty
racist. What does it mean?
It means that the Japanese people thought that they were the superior Asians, and it was part of the reasons why they were so keen to do that shit they did during World War II. Japanese viewed themselves as the superior Asian race, and every other Asian is being subservient to them. It doesn't get much more racist than Japan. You want to try to draw a parallel to another homogenous society. Japan is like the worst go-to argument. It's also a dying country of people who, because they refuse to let anybody else in, are having horrible problems with their population. Who, like, Japan has a lot of like world record-setting suicide rates. Like, I don't think Japan is the country that you want to point to as your model homogenous society.
I just disagree. I think it is a model society. I mean,
some classic "you're just wrong" shit. Like, I disagree. I think it is a model society when Destiny is outlined like high suicide rates. They're fucking ethnic supremacists against everybody in Asia. Their like population pyramid fucking sucks. Their income levels fucking suck on average, and life sucks so bad in Japan. The degree of like social alienation or whatever there is so high. It's higher than that fucking guy who talks about rents all the time. The rent is too damn high. Higher than that.
In what way?
See, look, it's happening now. I mean, what is it that's so offensive about white people saying they would like to preserve their...
I just don't understand what's so offensive about wanting a white ethno-state, bro. Why can't I have a ethnically homogenous white supremacist white ethno-state, dude?
Demographic majority. I don't understand. It always gets into these semantics of
because I don't understand why that.
By the way, I think there are two states that I can currently think of that are very ethno-state-esque, if not just outright ethno-states, or maybe three. They are Japan, South Korea, and Israel. Not societies that you would want to emulate in really any way, shape, or form. Let's keep going here.
person.
Why is the skin color so important? And why would you drag the country down holding on to it? Like, there have been
Well, I didn't start this shit now, did I?
Well, there
You
have been
did.
contributions by other people to our country that are non-white.
Yes,
Why wouldn't we want to continue to foster this kind of behavior? Why would you want to close everybody down? Like,
Because
white wolf only.
I think human beings are at the core tribal, and they tend to want to stick to their own. I think it's completely natural, completely normal, and so.
But you've already proven that statement wrong in what you're saying, because you think you're a white person and you're half Iranian and what did you say, Hungarian? That wouldn't have been considered a white person 100 years ago. 100 years ago,
That is true.
Irish wasn't considered a white person.
I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about mass immigration. Like when they want to basically, you know, I mean, they've gone and they've said it on the DNC. What was it? Like the DNC.
Here's what JonTron didn't understand just there. Mass immigration, like they say it to sound scary, but mass immigration fundamentally is just the concept of, oh yeah, immigration happens and there are large numbers of people moving around. It's a pretty normal phenomenon. He is included in that mass immigration thing, but he doesn't realize that because he's like, oh no, I'm just one person. But then these people, he's treating them all like one single homogenous unit, which they're not. But he's incapable of seeing that. Like, he's incapable of seeing that, like, there's a person, every single one of those. And every single migrant in a mass migratory trend is a person, and JonTron himself, through being an immigrant, is part of a mass migratory trend. You know? There's a fundamental disconnect, I think, going on here.
Platform, they have that lady that was saying, you know, white people need to shut up and listen. Now, that's the kind of discourse we're looking at for the future of this country.
So, I mean, that sounds kind of bad, but again, you have... I mean,
kind of bad?
Well, I mean, that's what I find myself saying to a lot of white people. When you've got white people saying things like, oh, racism isn't real, or reverse racism is the bigger crime, or minorities in America are totally fine, you guys just need to, like, damn, like, at some point, you got to chill out, and, yeah, you have to listen to people and figure out what their problems are so that we can move forward in a positive...
This is the problem. When you get condescending, people say, fuck you, I don't want to listen, and that's why you're seeing this big pushback. I didn't start it. And
well, but
this
both
whole thing
sides
about
are condescending. We
white.
can't pretend the condescension only comes from one side, right? Like, Trump is literally the most abrasive political figure.
One side. It does come from.
Okay. So now they're doing civility politics, I think? In which case, the like, liberals frequently have a problem with being too civil, is what I've experienced. I wonder what the U.S. Will look like in history books in 2300. The greatest and only country in the world who is ruled by our supreme leader, or was a genocidal capitalistic dictatorship who betrayed the working class since its birth. Probably more similar to the latter. I think if history progresses the way that I think it does, then history books will be pretty critical of the United States. History books already are pretty critical of the United States, even in America. There's a limit that you can to which you can get away with that stuff, but I don't think that America will become totalitarian by 2300. It seems like, you know, the world over, we're experiencing a massive increase, uptick in fascism in political systems, but we're dancing with that now in the early 20th century, 21st century, like we were in the early 20th century as well. And there is most likely going to be some sort of series of events that leads to fascism declining, because fascism, I think I've explained earlier, is a self-consuming movement. There is no end goal. It can't succeed because there is no built-in condition for success. There have been some reformist projects that have been very successful. As much as I used to despise incrementalism, incremental reforms tend to stick, and the more of those that stick, the harder it will be for fascists to succeed, and the further left reactionaries will have to get. Fascism today is actually significantly to the left of fascism in the 1920s and 30s, because there are certain progressive values they have to at least allude to or gesture at in order to be socially accepted. You know, I'm in the long run, I'm a little bit more optimistic about what the world is capable of producing by the year 2300, mind you. This is 276 years in the future. I think we'll have done some good stuff by then. But it's also possible that I'm wrong and we end up living in a cyberpunk dystopia. But you know, there was such a thing as late stage feudalism, and that eventually gave way to capitalism, where things kind of improved over that. And right now we are in a late stage capitalist world, which I think is going to gradually start giving way to socialist movements and sort of things that contravene the interests of capital by the year 2300. Like, you know, as I'm saying, you know, when we're talking about that long of a time period, it's a little bit easier for me to make a projection. But you know, the intermediate and short term is much more uncertain. Anyways, that's my stream. I will come back to that. I'll have to remember I was about 16 minutes into that debate. I don't think anybody else. Nope, nobody else that I know is really live. So I'll be back soon, I guess. I don't know how soon. But I like streaming and I like reacting to stuff. This will definitely, at least hopefully, this me reacting to the Destiny JonTron debate will be on YouTube once it's done. Or the US was a human country. That too. That's also possible, assuming we get some like Star Trek stuff, where it's like, yeah, now we have a multi-special society. There's all sorts of aliens that live here as well, like well, you know, like in Star Trek. All right. 2 hours is probably my limit. It's 8:45 here. I got to start winding down for the evening. Like I said, I'll see you guys soon. I don't know how soon that is or when that is, but aliens not my America. That is my America. I am actually the little green man. I'm wearing makeup, a lot of makeup. Account created 13 minutes ago. Ban. All right, cool. Guy joined my chat, and the first thing he said was a racial slur. What a note to end it on. I'll see you guys next time.